Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
So I want to first introduce myself. My name is Emily Kreitziger. I have narcolepsy without cataplexy. Currently, I am a bookkeeper at my in-laws' family farm, and we also run an agricultural drainage business as well. And I'm also an avid snowmobiler. I want to thank you all very much for attending my presentation today. And before I get started, I just want to kind of ask you some questions so I can get a feel of who I have in attendance today. So who in the room has been diagnosed with narcolepsy? Okay, so good number of them. Who has type 1? And type 2? Yep, type 1 is with cataplexy.
I don't.
And type 2? Okay. Who in the room is a caregiver, a family friend, or a supporter of somebody with narcolepsy? Awesome. Well, I want to thank every single one of you for being here today and supporting the person in your life that has narcolepsy. It means the world to us to have you. What I'd like to do with my presentation today is to give you a glimpse into my personal story being diagnosed with narcolepsy. A little bit about my snowmobiling background and how it fits into my life, and some ways that each and every one of you can make awareness, education, and advocacy for narcolepsy a part of your lives. So I first noticed symptoms of narcolepsy when I was in basic training for the Air Force. I graduated high school from a small town in Wisconsin in 2008. And went straight into basic training. Now, for those of you who don't know, basic training isn't just about doing obstacle courses and endless hours of physical training and getting yelled at by training instructors. Most days were filled with classroom sessions. And it's there that I noticed that something wasn't quite right. We were allotted 8 hours of sleep every night, and even though I got a good night's sleep, I was always falling asleep during class. My flight mates would kick my foot or nudge me with their elbow, just anything to try to keep me awake. And after basic training, you go into a technical school for whatever job it is that you're going to be doing. And again, it was days full of these long classroom sessions. So most days, you could find me standing in the back of the classroom and sometimes even starting to fall asleep standing up. And coffee did nothing to help, energy drinks did nothing to help. My nighttime sleep was also getting worse. I found it hard to fall asleep and stay asleep at night. And I finally decided to go and see the on-base doctor for some help. And so she decided to give me a sleeping medication to try and help me sleep. And the next day, or over the next month, I took the sleeping medication and slept through the night, but it did little to help me stay awake during the day. So they took me off the sleeping pill after that month, and I was once again left to try and fend off my symptoms myself. So January of 2009, I returned from basic training and tech school and started college at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and also took on a part-time job. All my energy was devoted to school and work. I had no social life whatsoever. I lived with my family, but I kept to myself and basically stayed in my room if I wasn't at work or at school. I talked with friends, but I was always too tired to hang out with them. In class, I was falling asleep in lectures, falling asleep at home, trying to do homework. I decided to try and seek out advice, so I visited my primary care physician. While these sleeping issues had been going on, I noticed that my anxiety was getting out of control. I had always had anxiety issues, and the doctor explained that in his opinion, my sleep issues were due to my anxiety, that my mind was not able to shut down at night, so I wasn't able to get a good night's rest, therefore why I was falling asleep during the day. And so I went this route for a couple different years, switching between many different anxiety and sleep medications and trying to get a handle on everything. In the summer of 2011, I received my grades back from my spring semester. I went from a high honors student with straight A's to failing that semester with a 1.0. I was tired, I was frustrated, and I had enough at that point. The brain fog made me feel stupid, like I couldn't retain any more knowledge. I questioned my ability to even stay in college. Due to my grades, I lost my GI Bill from the military that was helping to pay for my tuition. I was tired of putting myself in danger commuting to school and having sleep attacks behind the wheel. I was fed up with doctors not listening to me and telling me what I wanted to hear and not what I needed to hear. That's when I made the decision to switch to a different primary care physician. I made sure to focus his attention on my sleep issues, and this doctor finally decided to send me to see a sleep specialist. So I go to see the sleep specialist, and he initially diagnoses me with idiopathic hypersomnia and gives me a stimulant medication and then orders my sleep study. I had my sleep study in January of 2012, and I was diagnosed with narcolepsy with cataplexy at the end of that month. Now, when I was first diagnosed, I had a lot of questions. My doctor didn't explain to me what narcolepsy was. So I was left feeling empty getting out of that appointment. How did I get this? What are all the symptoms of narcolepsy? Is there a cure? What are my treatment options? How is my life going to change? I wasn't sure how to feel. Should I feel happy that I finally got an answer to what I've been living with for so many years? Should I be sad or depressed because I was diagnosed with something that I didn't quite understand? How do I tell my friends and family? Do I even tell them what's going to happen with my military career? When I was young, my father instilled in me a need to learn about the world. And when I would ask him a question, instead of him telling me the answer, he would tell me to go look it up. So he taught me to use the resources of the internet to find the answers to the questions I had. So, of course, when I got home from that appointment, the first thing I want to do was to go to Google and start searching. I started with a Wikipedia page about narcolepsy, and shortly after found the sites for both Narcolepsy Network and Wake Up Narcolepsy. Both groups have been incredible resources for me to learn about narcolepsy. Both sent me welcome packets full of information and answers to many of my questions. And the more I learned, the more I realized that the start of my symptoms were actually not during basic training, but actually started 10 years before in middle school. I could remember not sleeping through the night and sleeping in every chance I got. Much more than the average teenager. I finally started to come to grips with my diagnosis, knowing that there was no cure, but relishing in the knowledge that the right treatment plan would eventually give me relief for my symptoms, or at least some, in order to have a happy, functioning life. Once I received my diagnosis, I of course needed to tell the military. My stepdad, who was an officer, still is, I don't think he'll ever retire, drove the two of us to and from drills every month so that I didn't have to drive. And I gave them all the necessary paperwork, talked with the base doctor about the types of medications I was on, and each month when I went into military drills, I would meet with the doctor to see how I was doing. The problem wasn't my diagnosis, the problem was whether or not it would keep me from deploying. They didn't have records of anyone else on base having narcolepsy. So each month they would meet to discuss what to do with me, and each month they couldn't make a decision. Even with medication, I was still falling asleep at my desk, falling asleep in meetings. At least I finally had an explanation so that I didn't get into trouble. In December 2012, I finally made the decision to voluntarily leave the military, and I did receive an honorable discharge, thankfully. My body just had enough. I would come from drills and sleep the rest of the day. I just could not keep up the pace anymore. At college, I decided to seek out accommodations to see what was available for me, And I always thought of the Disability Accommodations Office as a place that only would help people with a physical impairment or some kind of mental or learning disability. So I didn't think that having narcolepsy would allow me to get any help, but I thought I would give it a try anyways. And turns out narcolepsy absolutely counts. I was able to get certain provisions to help, such as the ability to stay home from class without any kind of attendance penalty. I was given extra time to do assignments, due date extensions, and extra time to take tests if I needed the time. Each new semester, I would give my professors the necessary paperwork and explain my situation, and for the most part, they were very understanding and accommodating. After diagnosis, I learned as much as I could about narcolepsy. Once I felt informed enough, I decided to go ahead and start telling my friends and family about my diagnosis. And at the time, I felt like everyone was listening to me, but I didn't feel like they really got it. I was new to all of this too, so it became pretty frustrating trying to voice what I needed to and to tell them exactly what it was that was going on with my mind and body. And looking back, I wish that there was some kind of letter or explanation that I could give my loved ones to be able to get them to understand narcolepsy from someone else's perspective, maybe. And this year, I came across a letter written by a man named Dean Jordheim, and he's a writer and spokesperson from North Dakota that was diagnosed with idiopathic hypersomnia. And a couple of years ago, he wrote an open letter that explains what it's like to have idiopathic hypersomnia and narcolepsy in a way that you can basically insert your name into this letter and give it to friends and family. So I would like to read just a section of that letter with my own name inserted. When you have narcolepsy, your body usually gets plenty of sleep, but your brain is in a constant state of sleep deprivation. People with narcolepsy carry a significant amount of sleep deprivation, which only gets worse over time because sleep doesn't provide relief. The most common symptoms of sleep deprivation are forgetfulness, memory issues in general, difficulties with concentration, decision making, and overall ability to think clearly. The extra effort required to focus on the issue at hand makes it very easy to forget about things that are out of your field of vision, causing problems with anything that resembles multitasking. The emotional results of sleep deprivation are probably the easiest to see though. I'm sure you are familiar with how easy it is to get cranky when you're tired. Now imagine fighting this off every minute that you are awake. On top of all the internal difficulties people with narcolepsy face, other people sometimes just don't get it. As a disabled workaholic, the things that really gets to me is the way people tend to think I am lazy. I am constantly judging myself on my productivity, or now typically my lack thereof, and Emily is probably the same. She has probably become accustomed to being criticized for not trying hard enough by people who aren't putting forth nearly the effort she is. When she appears to be sitting on the couch doing nothing, she is probably wondering how it will be possible to accomplish everything that needs to be done. If she is still employed, she is probably struggling more to keep up at her job than she lets on. And if she is no longer able to work, she needs more emotional support than you can possibly imagine. If Emily is like almost every one of the thousands of people with narcolepsy I have talked to in the past couple years, she is constantly beating herself up for what feels like constant failure. So these two paragraphs represent my two biggest struggles having narcolepsy and explaining it to others: the taxing mental strain and the perception of laziness that is projected upon others. So after diagnosis, you basically have to relearn your own body. It's been almost 7 years since my diagnosis, and I've learned many different ways to help cope with the symptoms. So I'm going to combine a couple points here. Knowing your limit and pacing yourself. Imagine that your body is a battery. with a finite amount of energy. So the maximum energy of someone with narcolepsy is nowhere near what it is for someone who doesn't have it. Who's heard of the spoon theory? Few hands. Okay. So the spoon theory is a way of explaining chronic illness and the reduced amount of energy that's associated with it. So you can have a finite number of spoons, say 12 spoons. So that's what your energy is equal to. And activities like going to work, going to an appointment, going shopping, those kinds of activities are equal to 4 spoons. All the way down to activities like getting yourself out of bed in the morning or getting dressed are equal to 1 spoon. So the theory behind it is basically to use your energy wisely and spread it out throughout the day. Naps. Naps don't work for everyone, but they do for many. Sometimes a 15-minute power nap is enough. And some people need a couple hours to lay down and rest. So do whatever works for you. I particularly do not like naps because they make me feel like I've had the flu for days once I wake up. Some workplaces will even work with you to help schedule in a nap period, taking your 2 15-minute breaks and combining them together so that you can go lay down for 20 minutes. While I was in college, I felt like I was the expert on campus for finding the best nap places. My favorite was the Fireside Lounge because it had this really nice fireplace to lay next to. Routines. I think routines are one of the best tricks that have helped me so far. It ties back to our spoon theory that you only have a finite amount of energy. So sticking to a routine will help you to kind of get into a rhythm and know exactly where your energy is being spent. And we all know our energy is a very, very valuable commodity. Finding your support system. Everyone needs a strong support system, no matter if they're battling a chronic illness or not. And it doesn't matter who it is. Your best bet is to obviously have your significant other or a close family member there to support you and to listen to you when you need to vent. If that's not the case, look for a close friend or a coworker that you trust. If you can't make any progress there, there's always support groups like Narcolepsy Support Group on Facebook that is full of people with narcolepsy that are there to talk whenever you need it. And reach out into your communities to see if there's a local support group that's available. Those in your support group will most likely at some point have to be an advocate for you. So it's important that they understand what you're going through. Being open and honest with your doctor. If you don't say anything or ask questions, your doctor isn't going to be able to help you. Discuss symptoms, ask questions, and bring up concerns. If you feel like a medication isn't working for you, speak up and say something. Doctors can't read your mind, and in some cases, we're the ones that have to do the educating. Doctors, I've asked my doctor questions, and I'm thankful that I've done it because I have since found out that I do not have cataplexy. So remember when I told you my doctor didn't explain narcolepsy to me when I was first diagnosed? He also didn't ask me many questions and subsequently diagnosed me with cataplexy when that's not the case. Walking. Walking to me is like free energy. When I'm at my counter falling asleep during work, I'll get out, go outside, grab my dog, grab my in-laws' dog, and walk around the farm. Walking gives your mind a rest, it gets your blood pumping, and a little exercise never hurt us. Walk around your house, walk around your office, get your muscles warm and moving. Being your own advocate. No one is a better advocate for what you are going through than yourself. You know your body better than anyone else. You know how you feel each and every day. Stick up for yourself at home, at your doctor, at school, and in your workplace. Someone might not understand exactly what you're going through, but I think explaining it to them might motivate them to lend a more understanding ear to your situation. And definitely don't forget the little things. If you put away a load of laundry, if you made dinner that night, if you got yourself out of bed that morning and showered, then you deserve a trophy for the day. Let's all just be honest. We often live our lives making all these little accomplishments, and they often are taken for granted by those who do not live with narcolepsy. And for us, it's like finishing a marathon. Each and every accomplishment is a victory that you can be proud of. So my whole life, I've always been an adrenaline junkie. The closest I got to action sports growing up was roller coasters at Six Flags and competing in swimming and gymnastics while I was still in high school. Through it all, I still felt like something was missing, that there was something else out there that I was still meant to experience. And growing up, no one in my family was into snowmobiling at all. The only time I'd ever seen a snowmobile was once in a movie. So in 2013, I get this text from this guy, and he invited me out to his family farm to go snowmobiling. So I, of course, jumped at the chance. And from that day, I was hooked, and I even married the guy. It was such a rush and such a freeing experience. So I've been riding and racing snowmobiles going on 6 years now. My husband, his brother, his dad have been racing together for over 12 years. So it's one big family affair. So I have 2 snowmobiles, or just for short, we call them sleds. So the one on the right in the top picture and the bottom picture is my first race sled named Sophie. Some people name their cars. I'm one of those weird people that names my snowmobiles. So that's Sophie. I compete in a road course style racing called lake cross. So lake cross is done on frozen lakes and ponds, and each lap that we do is between 1 and 2 miles in length, and usually 3-mile heat and final races. So currently I compete in the women's class, and occasionally with the boys in the semi-pro 500 class when there's less than 3 drivers, because that means it's a free trophy for me. So far I have accumulated a total of 5 career wins and 14 podium finishes in 17 races. The one on the top left is my trail and cross-country sled. His name is Simba. It's an Arctic cat, so I had to do it. I mainly drive that sled for leisurely rides on the trails and on our farmland. And this is also the sled that I will eventually be using for my cross-country circuit racing. So what does this all have to do with narcolepsy? Well, racing and riding has become my way of combating all the negative thoughts and feelings that come with having narcolepsy. It's my way of escaping the world of my daily struggles. And I feel completely normal as I'm wheeling my sled around the twists and turns of the ice or snow. Adrenaline is like free energy as well as walking is for me. So whenever I'm on my sled, I completely forget that I even have narcolepsy. I have as much energy as I need to get myself around the course that I'm on. And however, it does work as a double-edged sword every once in a while, because as soon as I'm done on the track, I'm ready for a nap. And sometimes you will find me sleeping on the floor of our trailer. So racing weekends also mean longer travel and hiccups in that routine that we discussed earlier. So my husband and I always get to the race a day beforehand, so that there's not as much crammed on me in one day. And that can be applied to any time you take a trip with family members, like on vacation. I try to make sure that I get as much sleep as I can the night before. We always also build in an extra day of travel to get back home, so again, I'm not getting pushed into doing too much in one day. We all know that taking our medications on time is paramount, so I always have to be aware of what time it is so that I don't miss a dose of my stimulant. So as human beings, we're constantly comparing ourselves to those around us and judging each other. So other than the perpetual tired looks on our faces, we look completely normal and healthy. But we all know that this is just a mask for what the truth is inside of us. Whenever I encounter someone else that I can educate about narcolepsy, there's always 3 situations that I run into. So the first situation is that person has never heard the word narcolepsy before. Second situation would be that they've heard the word, but they don't know what it is. And the third situation I've run into is they've heard the word narcolepsy before, but they think that the media stereotype of what narcolepsy is the truth that we live every day. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. Use the moments when someone makes a comment about how tired you are or how tired you look to spark a conversation about narcolepsy. Ask them what they know. Correct the misconceptions that they might have. Give them the most basic information so that they don't get into information overload. I found that presenting narcolepsy as an incurable neurological sleep disorder and explaining the 4 main symptoms has been the most effective for me. By sparking that conversation, you're planting a seed. You want people to ask about it because they themselves are interested in listening. Nothing is more frustrating than trying to explain narcolepsy to someone who doesn't want to listen and doesn't care. I think we can all also relate to that situation before. And so as I previously stated, I'm a big proponent for learning about the world. And if we are to truly help the rest of the world understand what narcolepsy is, we have to first understand it ourselves. So the most important aspect of learning about narcolepsy is to learn what's happening in our own bodies. Nonprofit groups like Narcolepsy Network and Wake Up Narcolepsy are incredible resources for finding easy to understand information. Medical journals and articles are sometimes hard to understand, but they are also a wealth of information, especially when it comes to current research to better understand narcolepsy causes, finding cures, and manufacturing new medications. So how can we take our bank of knowledge and put it to good use? And why do it? Whenever I explain narcolepsy to someone, my hope is that one day people will be able to recognize the symptoms in someone else or even themselves. We know that only 25% of those with narcolepsy are actually diagnosed. Planting that seed could help increase the number of people who get diagnosed, and it will help to erase the media stigma that many people have about narcolepsy. Hopefully this will also cut down on the number of years it takes between the onset of symptoms and getting a medical diagnosis, which right now is between 8 and 10 years. Every year in March, we have National Sleep Awareness Week. This is used to focus on sleep disorders, including narcolepsy, and there are many organizations that do participate in this week. I use Sleep Week to personally share graphics from Narcolepsy Network and Wake Up Narcolepsy on social media. So each day, these organizations will post a new fact about narcolepsy, and they're completely shareable. I share them on my personal page, and I usually do a little write-up about how that fact applies to me and my situation and my story. And I also make those posts public so that my friends can in turn then take those and share them on Facebook as well. The last Saturday of Sleep Week is called Suddenly Sleep Saturday, which is Narcolepsy Awareness Day, so we get our own day. Proclamations are also a way to get the word out in your community. Proclamations are official announcements or declarations, usually by someone in some kind of governmental office. This year for Sleep Week, I had an official proclamation signed by the governor of Wisconsin to declare March 10th, 2018 as National Narcolepsy Awareness Day. Narcolepsy Network makes that very easy to do. They supply us with the information on how to contact our local governmental offices, and even give you all the words of what the proclamation is supposed to say, so that you don't have to figure it out yourself. So for me, all I had to do was submit my information on an online form, and a couple of weeks later, in the mail, I got the official proclamation in a nice envelope. These proclamations are also posted publicly on the government's website, so anybody that's looking at that website will see that proclamation there. Support groups are a beneficial way to both get and give information. The two groups I use most on Facebook are Narcolepsy Support Group and Narcolepsy Network. We're all here for each other. We all know what each other is going through. My favorite thing about meeting other people with narcolepsy is the fact that I don't have to explain myself to anyone else, because each and every one of you shares something with me. We use our experiences to share with one another and help each other through those difficult times that each of us has experienced. It's because that you don't have to explain yourself. That's the best part about it. Never be afraid to hop on social media and ask a question. We're all there to support each other on this long road of living with narcolepsy. Lastly, I want to speak a little bit about my future endeavors. Since I've been diagnosed, I have felt a deeply seated need to help other people with narcolepsy and help to create a general public understanding of narcolepsy better. This is why I'm working on creating my own nonprofit organization called Racing for Rest. Racing for Rest will focus on awareness, education, and advocacy for narcolepsy. And I'll be using mine and my husband's racing careers as a platform to do so. One of the first things I want to do is create decal stickers that can be placed on snowmobiles, on cars, you name it, with an official logo to help spark that conversation. One of the things that I found when we go out on the trail snowmobiling is when you come across other snowmobiles, the first thing you're doing is looking at the graphics on that sled. Right now on my sleds, I actually have stickers that say Narcolepsy Awareness, and I also have ones that say I'm not tired, I'm narcoleptic. And I cannot tell you how many times those stickers have allowed me to share my story with other people and share awareness and advocacy for it. I also want to eventually include clothing items as well. And 100% of the profits from selling those decals and clothes and whatever else it is that I come up with will go back to organizations like Narcolepsy Network to help fund research and advocacy programs. I want to start competing on the national cross-country circuit to get more exposure for that program. So in closing, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I hope you got something out of this presentation that helps you in your own battle or in your future endeavors with narcolepsy, and hopefully this inspires you to use your disorder as a gift to help others. You can find me on Facebook by searching my personal page. My husband and I also have an official page for our racing, so you can kept up to date on our racing schedules, results, and we also record every single one of our races. I also have my own YouTube channel where I post all my race videos. And I also have a couple of videos on there about narcolepsy, and a recording of today's program will also be uploaded on there as well, in case you want to go back and watch it again. I also have a GoFundMe page set up to help raise funds to get my Racing for Us organization off the ground, if any of you would like to support me in my mission. So with that, does anybody have any questions? Yes.
When, you know, my daughter has narcolepsy, so she was diagnosed at age 11. She's 21 now. And when you were talking about all of those emotions and the, going to school, going to work, sitting in your room, I mean, I was just like, oh yeah, that's so much. But so when you accomplish the things like you're accomplishing, those sound to me amazing for a person without narcolepsy. So how do you still though feel that failure sometimes though? I mean, when you were saying that, that's the part I don't, because my daughter goes through that same stuff.
Every day, every single day, I feel guilt, not being able to sometimes do really simple things, especially at home. Currently, I am not on any medications. My husband and I are trying to start a family, and with working with my doctor, we thought that it would be best just to not be on any of my medications. So working has become much more difficult for me. Home life has been incredibly difficult for me. My husband has had to step up a lot and help me with basic things like cleaning the bathroom or doing dishes or helping me with laundry. And I feel incredibly guilty for having to put so much pressure on him, knowing like I feel that I should be able to accomplish these things just like any normal person. It's just I don't have the energy. And when I get into those modes that I start to spin so many negative thoughts, that I have to always tell myself to take that step back and say, I have narcolepsy, I can't do anything about that, but what I can do, I'm going to do. So I'm able to sometimes then push those negative emotions out and try to find something positive. Like I said, remembering those little things. That's what I try to do on a daily basis as well, that if I got myself out of bed, hooray for me. That's great. Because at certain points when you get into those really low ends, that's all you can do to hang on to sometimes to keep yourself sane. So definitely hanging on to those little things is what keeps me from kind of sinking myself into that dark pit. And you're going to have really good days and you're going to have really bad days, and that's okay. Like I had said before, kind of relearning your body, you have to learn what your new normal is. And once you start to accept that, I think the journey does become a little bit easier. Anybody else?
The letter, or the paragraphs from the letter, who is that gentleman that wrote
So
that?
his name is Dean Jordheim. His last name is spelled Jordheim. And it's really easy to find actually if you just go on Google and type in his name. The website that he wrote the article on is like the first or second link that'll come up on Google. And it'll link right to his blog post that has that letter in it. So all I did was basically copy and pasted it, and then took out like all the IHs for idiopathic hypersomnia, and then inserted my name wherever it needed to be inserted, changed all the he's to she's, and there we go. I have a letter to give to everyone.
What is his name?
Dean Jordheim, and I do have the spelling of that if you want to look and get that. Yeah, like I said, I wish I had that back when I was first diagnosed. So that now if I have, friends or family that don't quite understand, it's great to have that letter written from someone else's perspective instead of you trying to take all the time and energy and frustration and exhaustion of trying to explain your narcolepsy to somebody else. This is a way to do it from someone else's perspective. And sometimes people are more willing to listen and to understand if it's coming from somebody else. So that was an incredible resource that I found that hopefully will be able to help some of you one day.
Your story is amazing. Thank you for sharing. I wish my daughter was in this session. She's 20 years old, and I'm hearing so many stories of kind of broken dreams. My daughter's dream and plan is to be in the Peace Corps, and just recently has realized she's not going to be able to get her Xyrem. She can't function without her Xyrem. It's not going to work. So now she's thinking, maybe I'll be a history teacher or anthropology teacher. I don't know. But I'm hearing so many of those stories, and the courage that it takes, and the fact that you found something that makes you feel free and gives you energy is amazing. I would love so many people to hear your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'll be uploading a video of this onto my YouTube channel, so you can just search my name, or it's just youtube.com/girlswithsnowmobile.
This whole session?
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
my entire
wonderful.
presentation will be uploaded. My loving husband is recording it for me.
Thank you.
But yeah, when I was in college, I wanted to graduate with a microbiology degree. I always loved biotechnology and bacteria, and as my symptoms started to progressively get worse during college, I realized that my brain just couldn't handle like the chemistry and the physics, and so I had to completely change my college plans and graduate with a different degree. It's not what I wanted, but I still was able to find happiness knowing that I graduated. I have my bachelor's degree. So even if life plans don't go the way that maybe you wish they would have, it's just finding those little victories that has made my journey a little bit easier. And like I said, snowmobiling for me, maybe singing or painting for somebody else. It's just taking the time to find that one thing in your life that just gives you so much joy and such a feeling of accomplishment. And sometimes people search for that for a lifetime, but again, I hope each and every one of you that's been diagnosed, eventually finds that in your life, because you'd be surprised at how much easier it is to deal with having narcolepsy once you find that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much.